Have you ever wondered whether Indian history textbooks tell the whole story? We live in a world shaped by history, our perceptions of the world and our place within it, molded by the narratives we read and learn. The textbooks we study from in our school years play a crucial role in forming these narratives. But what if these textbooks don't tell us the whole story? What if they're missing pieces, or worse, misrepresenting them? This brings us to the question of Indian history textbooks. Are they comprehensive enough? Do they provide an unbiased view of the past, or are they skewed towards a particular narrative? These are some of the questions we will be exploring in this video. We will scrutinize the content of these textbooks, compare them with those of other countries, and delve into the criticisms they face. So buckle up and prepare your minds for a historical journey. Stay tuned as we delve into the world of Indian history textbooks and compare them with those of other countries. Indian history textbooks, like those of any other country, are meant to educate students about the country's past. They serve as a window into the rich tapestry of events, personalities, and narratives that have shaped the nation we see today. The textbooks typically begin with the ancient civilization of the Indus Valley, taking us back thousands of years into a world that thrived on the banks of the Indus River. They chronicle the rise and fall of empires, from the Mauryan to the Gupta, showcasing the might and wisdom of rulers like Ashoka and Chandragupta. Next, they delve into the medieval era, painting a vivid picture of the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire. They introduce us to the architectural marvels of this period and the cultural fusion that occurred, while also highlighting the battles, conquests, and political intrigues of the time. The textbooks then transition into the modern era, starting with the advent of European powers. They shed light on the colonial rule of the British, the struggle for independence, and the birth of the Indian Republic. They celebrate the leaders who guided India through these tumultuous times, like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. However, the textbooks also have their share of criticisms. For instance, they have been accused of glossing over certain aspects of history. The complexity of the caste system, the diversity of tribal cultures, and the socio-economic impact of colonial rule are often not explored in depth. Similarly, the role of women in history and the contributions of South India to the nation's heritage are areas that could be better represented. Another notable omission is the lack of regional histories. While the textbooks do a commendable job of presenting a pan-Indian narrative, they sometimes overlook the rich and diverse histories of individual states and regions. As we see, Indian history textbooks offer a particular perspective of the country's past. They highlight certain events, personalities, and narratives, while others get less attention. But just like history itself, these textbooks are a work in progress, constantly evolving to better reflect the multifaceted story of India. But how does the content of Indian history textbooks compare to those of other countries? Well, let's take a journey around the globe and see how different countries emphasize different aspects of their history. Starting with the United States, American history textbooks primarily focus on the nation's journey from the colonial period to the present day. They often highlight the ideals of democracy, freedom, and equality that underpin the American identity. However, these texts have been criticized for underplaying the darker aspects of American history, such as slavery and the treatment of Native Americans. Heading over to China, the history textbooks are largely shaped by the government's political agenda. They emphasize the glory of ancient Chinese civilization and the achievements of the Communist Party, while limiting discussion on sensitive topics like the Cultural Revolution or the Tiananmen Square protests. In contrast, Indian history textbooks offer a broad scope of the country's past, from the ancient Indus Valley civilization to the struggles of the modern republic. They attempt to balance the portrayal of India's rich cultural heritage with the complexities of its social and political evolution. However, like any other country, these textbooks are not immune from controversy. with debates often arising about the representation of certain events or figures. Meanwhile, in European countries like the United Kingdom or France, history textbooks tend to focus on the nation's role in shaping the modern world. British textbooks, for example, often discuss the Industrial Revolution and the British Empire, while French ones highlight the French Revolution and the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. So, what can we deduce from this brief comparison? Each country's history textbooks reflect their national priorities and identities. They choose to emphasize certain aspects of their past while downplaying others, often in line with their political, cultural, or social agenda. Clearly, the content of history textbooks varies greatly from country to country. Yet, no history textbook is without its critics. Indeed, Indian history textbooks have faced their fair share of criticism over the years. One of the main criticisms is that they often present a nationalistic narrative, focusing on the glories of India's past while glossing over more controversial aspects. This, critics argue, results in an overly positive, somewhat one-dimensional portrayal of Indian history. Some critics also take issue with the portrayal of certain historical events and figures. For instance, there's ongoing debate about how the Mughal era and British colonial period are depicted. Some argue these periods are presented in a negative light, while others maintain they're overly romanticized. Another point of contention is the lack of diversity in perspectives. Critics argue that the textbooks often represent a largely upper caste, Hindu-centric view of history, neglecting the experiences and contributions of other social groups. These criticisms have sparked debates about the need for reform in how we teach history. Some propose a more inclusive approach, incorporating the voices and experiences of a wider range of social groups. Others suggest the need for a more critical examination of controversial periods and figures rather than simplifying them to fit a particular narrative. There's also a push for changes in the way history is taught. Critics argue for a shift away from rote memorization towards a more analytical approach that encourages students to think critically about historical events and narratives. However, it's important to note that these proposed reforms are not without their own controversies. There are differing opinions on what should be included, how it should be presented, and how much weight should be given to different perspectives. In the end, it's crucial to remember that history textbooks, like all texts, are products of their time and place. They are not definitive accounts of the past, but interpretations that reflect certain perspectives and priorities. This understanding can go a long way in fostering a more nuanced and critical engagement with the past.